Hello everyone. While much of the world remains focused on trade wars, tariffs, inflation, and geopolitical tensions between Washington and Beijing, another story has quietly emerged, one that could prove just as important for the future balance of power in the Western world. At first glance, it sounds like a routine military procurement story. Canada needs new submarines, Germany wants to sell submarines, defense companies compete, governments negotiate, contracts get signed. But beneath the surface lies something much bigger. What if this is not really about submarines? What if this is about Canada's place in the world? What if this is about the future of NATO? And what if this is the first visible sign that America's closest ally is beginning to build a security strategy that relies less on Washington and more on Europe? Because according to reports, Germany has now put forward one of the most ambitious defense offers Canada has ever received. 4 advanced submarines, massive industrial cooperation, and what could amount to tens of billions of dollars in economic benefits. The proposal arrives at exactly the same moment when relations between Ottawa and Washington are becoming increasingly strained. The timing is impossible to ignore. And for Prime Minister Mark Carney, this may be one of the most important strategic decisions Canada has faced in decades. The headlines focus on submarines, but the submarines are only the visible part of the iceberg. Germany's shipbuilding giant TKMS has offered Canada 4 Type 212CD submarines, one of the most advanced conventional submarine designs currently being built anywhere in the world. These vessels are specifically designed for stealth operations. They can remain underwater for extended periods. They can operate in challenging northern environments, and most importantly for Canada, they are designed to help monitor vast maritime territories, including the Arctic. But what makes this offer extraordinary is not simply the technology. It is the speed. Canada has repeatedly complained about military procurement projects taking decades to complete. Germany recognized this concern immediately. Instead of merely promising future production slots, Berlin reportedly proposed something far more dramatic. Germany and Norway would potentially redirect submarines from their own production schedules to help meet Canada's delivery timeline. Think about that. 2 NATO countries are willing to postpone elements of their own naval modernization programs to ensure Canada receives submarines faster. That is not normal behavior. Countries do not make those kinds of sacrifices unless the strategic importance is extremely high. This is not a sales pitch. This is geopolitical investment. Why Canada suddenly matters so much. To understand why Germany is making such an aggressive move, we must first understand Canada's changing position in the global security system. For decades, Canada's defense strategy was relatively straightforward. The United States handled much of North America's strategic security. Canada contributed to NATO. The 2 countries worked together through NORAD, and Canadian military procurement often leaned heavily toward American suppliers. The system was predictable, stable, reliable. But over the last few years, that predictability has begun to disappear. The return of Donald Trump to the White House has fundamentally altered how many allied nations think about their future security arrangements. Trump's message has remained remarkably consistent. Allies should spend more. Allies should contribute more. And allies should buy American military equipment. From Washington's perspective, this position is understandable. The United States spends enormous sums defending the Western alliance. American taxpayers increasingly ask why they should carry such a large burden. But from the perspective of allied governments, the message has created a different concern. What happens if the United States becomes less predictable? What happens if American support becomes conditional? What happens if every future negotiation comes with the threat of tariffs, economic pressure, or political confrontation? Those questions are now being asked not only in Ottawa, they are being asked in Berlin, Paris, Tokyo, Seoul, and throughout NATO. Many observers still underestimate Mark Carney. They view him primarily as a banker, a technocrat, an economist. But that may actually be his greatest strength. Carney understands leverage, he understands dependencies, and he understands risk. From a financial perspective, dependence on a single supplier is dangerous. Dependence on a single customer is dangerous. Dependence on a single market is dangerous. The same logic applies to national security. For decades, Canada relied heavily on the United States for military cooperation, defense technology, and strategic planning. The relationship remains critical, but Carney appears increasingly determined to diversify Canada's options. Not replace America. Diversify away from overdependence. There is an important difference. This strategy is becoming visible across multiple sectors simultaneously. Defense cooperation with Europe, expanded relationships with Asian partners, new trade initiatives, greater focus on domestic industrial development, and increasing efforts to attract foreign investment independent of Washington's influence. Viewed individually, each move appears modest. Viewed together, they begin to look like a comprehensive national strategy. A strategy designed to give Canada more room to maneuver in a world that is becoming less stable and more competitive. The Arctic changes everything. Now let's talk about the factor that may ultimately determine this entire competition. The Arctic. For years, many people treated the Arctic as a remote and largely irrelevant region. That era is ending. Rapid climate change is opening new shipping routes. Resource exploration opportunities are expanding. Russian military activity remains significant. China increasingly describes itself as a near-Arctic state, and global competition is moving north. Canada possesses one of the largest Arctic territories on Earth, yet its ability to monitor and defend that territory has become a growing concern. The Royal Canadian Navy's aging Victoria-class submarines have long faced operational limitations. At various points, only a fraction of the fleet has been fully available. That reality creates a major strategic vulnerability. Submarines are not simply weapons. They are intelligence platforms. They gather information, track foreign vessels, monitor maritime activity, and create uncertainty for potential adversaries. Without modern submarines, Canada's ability to understand what is happening beneath Arctic waters becomes dramatically reduced. This is why the submarine competition matters so much. Whoever wins this contract may effectively shape Canada's underwater defense strategy for the next half-century. Not 5 years, not 10 years, 50 years. Why Washington may be concerned. The White House is likely watching this situation very carefully. Not because 4 submarines change the military balance. They do not. The concern is the signal. Signals matter in geopolitics. If Canada chooses Germany, it sends a message. If Canada joins more European defense initiatives, it sends another message. If Canada increasingly sources military equipment outside the United States, that sends an even bigger message. The message is simple. America's closest allies are exploring alternatives. That does not mean they are abandoning Washington, far from it. But it does mean they want options. And once allies begin building alternatives, influence inevitably becomes more distributed. That is why defense procurement decisions often carry significance far beyond the equipment being purchased. The hardware matters. The relationships matter more. A submarine fleet creates decades of cooperation, training programs, maintenance contracts, technology transfers, joint exercises, industrial partnerships, supply chains. Everything becomes interconnected. A defense contract signed today can shape diplomatic relationships for generations. As we look toward the next several months, 3 broad outcomes appear possible. Scenario 1. Germany wins. Germany secures the contract. The industrial investments begin flowing into Canada. European defense cooperation expands dramatically. Carney gains additional leverage in future negotiations with Washington. This becomes one of the most significant defense realignments in modern Canadian history. Scenario 2. South Korea wins. South Korea remains a formidable competitor. Its defense industry has become one of the fastest growing in the world. A Korean victory would still diversify Canada's partnerships away from the United States. But it would create a different geopolitical dynamic. The symbolism would be less about Europe and more about broader global diversification. Scenario 3. Political pressure changes everything. The third possibility is that broader geopolitical tensions intervene: trade disputes, NATO negotiations, USMCA discussions, tariff battles, diplomatic disagreements. Any of these could reshape the environment before a final decision is made. Defense contracts do not exist in isolation. They exist within politics. And politics can change rapidly. When historians look back at this moment, they may not remember the technical specifications of the Type 212 CD. They may not remember exact delivery schedules. They may not remember procurement details. Instead, they may remember something far more important. This may be remembered as the moment Canada began testing a new model of strategic independence. Not independence from NATO, not independence from the United States, but independence from excessive dependence on any single partner. Germany's offer represents more than a submarine deal. It represents an alternative vision. A vision in which Canada possesses more choices, more leverage, and more flexibility in an increasingly unpredictable world. The coming months will reveal whether Mark Carney is willing to take that path. Because once Canada commits to a submarine fleet, it is not merely buying vessels. It is choosing partnerships. It is choosing supply chains. It is choosing strategic relationships that could last until the 2080s and beyond. And that is why this story is not really about submarines at all. It is about the future direction of Canada itself.